It's only entertainment.
Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your cannabis business podcast. My guest today, Kat Glogowski, angel investor and attorney. Kat, thanks for being on the Talking Hedge again.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Yeah, good to see you. I think the last time you were on was like September. Man, time flies. But so like you've been on the podcast off and on for like the last 3 years. And we've talked a lot just about angel investing and being an attorney and all of the potential liabilities from all angles. And here we are. So let's take a look at some of the issues, because in Washington State, where we're both from, we've seen Ponzi schemes already in Washington State from a supplement company and another one from a CBD company. And we saw guys running around pretending to be investors and pretending to be license holders and stealing money left and right. But what we haven't seen yet, and we already talked about it, and here it is basically a publicly traded company being Glass House Brands accused of basically selling to the illicit market by the tons, like 75 tons or some crazy stuff. So when I talked to Kyle Kazan of Glass House a year and a half ago when I was with Seeking Alpha, he wasn't like, I had forgotten I even did this. And then thinking back, I was like, oh yeah, because he had these corporate responses and he just kind of was like, oh yeah, he didn't seem to have his hands dirty, didn't seem to know what he was doing. He was an ex-cop, thought that was interesting. And even more interesting now that allegedly he's one of the largest illegal grows around. And here we are. Ponzi scheme. IIPR is real estate investment trust accused of being a Ponzi scheme. And so I don't know, what do you think? Are we finally normalizing the cannabis industry as just every other industry out there that has its issues? I mean, because we've been talking about this for a while and it's finally here.
Is it a sign of doom or is it a badge of honor? A sign of doom, obviously, criminal activity, stealing people's money, things like this is never good. I do not recommend it. But the badge of honor being, hey, we're now so normal and open for Ponzi schemes. It is concerning. It's always concerning when there's criminal activity involved in any type of business, but it just taints the cannabis industry even more, unfortunately. But we have said since day one on this podcast, Josh, do your due diligence, know who you're doing business with, ask questions, and most importantly, once you write the check, you're not done. The check is the beginning of the marriage, not the end of the marriage. And just stay involved, ask questions. But this is concerning, of course.
Yeah, not the first one. I worked with Agrima Botanical up in Canada, publicly traded, one of the first 15 companies to have that export license, and they were selling out the back door before they were allowed to sell oil. They got caught twice and lost everything. So it's been around. It's pretty wild that people do it. But for those that don't know, basically what happened was this real estate investment trust, they are the big component of how companies get cash. Without banking, you have a company that goes in, buys a building, then goes to IIPR to get cash back out of that facility. And that's how they get cash on hand and able to continue to operate. So this is going to have trickle-down effects. Like Kat said, it's going to taint the entire industry because it doesn't move independently of one another. These stocks all move as a whole. So when one goes down, it'll bring all of them down. So essentially what happened was the investigators of IIPR reportedly failed to thoroughly investigate King Garden and Parallel until after a damaging report research from Blue Orca Capital that suggested that both companies would default on the rental obligations. And so while IIPR refuted that the report was flawed, there was a subsequent review of King Garden's $48 million reimbursement. And through all of the deep digging, they found that more than 15 million had suspiciously left King Garden accounts via organized crime, allegedly. Now IIPR is suing Kings Garden for fraud, labeling it a Ponzi scheme after IIPR informed investors that Kings Garden had ceased paying rent. Parallel also faced litigation last year over undisclosed debt around $300 million. So investors want IIPR to improve its corporate governance and internal procedures and ensure compliance and all these things they should have been doing. And that their failure to conduct due diligence and cause financial harm through legal fees, settlement costs, compensation, and benefits. But it's not the first time that they've done this. So in April 2022, some other investors went in and looked at IIPR misleading investors about incompetence, violating securities laws. And according to that lawsuit, IIPR allegedly knew of the fraudulent nature of Kings Garden operations and failed to inform investors. So that January lawsuit pointed to irregular transactions worth millions involving Kings Garden. And then a related party that had self-dealing. And we've seen that in Washington State too, where operators felt like they were entitled, they were the owners, but these investors are the ones that make it happen, and they forget that they are silent partners. And so they start self-dealing or taking money that they feel deserved or entitled to. And then investors come in and go, well, where's our cut? And they end up losing their business because, well, it's not allowed. So there's... I don't know. It's it seems normal to me, but it also seems like it's kind of people grabbing at straws or realizing that this is not what they thought it was going to be. They want more, they're demanding more, they're entitled to more. And it's just kind of reflective of the saturation in the market, the hype that all states go through, and the realization that they're not going to be overnight millionaires.
I think you have two different components here. You have the entrepreneur who is the owner of the business, the founder of the business. And as you stated, a sense of entitlement that maybe shouldn't be there, a lack of understanding, education, that this is not their money, it's the company's money. But you did correctly point out the struggle of the entrepreneur. However, for the investor, this points to a lack of due diligence, a lack of oversight, and a lack of understanding of what you are doing. If you don't put corporate controls in place to prevent somebody from spending, $100 million behind your back, then it's going to happen. But I think you're starting to see this now where the investor is, number one, always looking for a return. Number two, the market is very crazy right now. So the investor is saying, I want my money back. How am I going to get my money back? What's going on? What's my rate of return? Maybe they suffered a loss somewhere else. I mean, these investments are kind of coming to maturity at this point. So what's going on? Where's my money? You see this in this repeated pattern of an investor for all of their investments, which is showing all the warts.
Yeah. I think, the next level of normalization, because we live in a litigious society, right? So it's,
Yes.
the direction it's going to go, which is that I think there'll be a wave of lawsuits on the consumer end where they're like, oh, there's not enough THC. I thought it was supposed to be 10 milligrams. There's only 9.8. I'm suing. And so that'll be like, okay, we've made it. Look, mom, we've made it.
Yes.
It's not flattering. Unfortunately, it is the way it is. But all of it, like we talked, I think 9 months ago about Mars and Hershey's and all of these companies, the Mars company suing for patent infringement, trademark infringement.
Trademark, yeah.
Trademark, yeah. So that's kind of old. We've seen that, been there, done that. So I think maybe the next thing is going to be consumer lawsuits. I don't know. You got any crystal ball predictions?
I really do envision consumer litigation. My pre-roll wasn't a half gram. We've seen that with Taco Bell. My beef taco is only 35% beef. So we've seen these things before, facing the consumer. Also, hey, you sold this to me, pot store. Now I had negative side effects. We haven't seen anything like that. And of course, we have not seen any litigation over the quality, for example, the pesticides or lack of pesticides, or remember with VapeGate, they were putting vitamin E in there because it was safe, and then turned out it wasn't as safe as they thought. So all sorts of things. I do agree with you, though, that this is normalization of the cannabis industry. The alcohol industry goes through the same questions. The tobacco industry goes through the same questions. And agricultural industries go through the same questions. We hear, tainted spinach frequently, but it just reinforces the need for due diligence, compliance, and if you don't really understand what due diligence and compliance is, hire somebody who does, so that you don't end up in a Ponzi scheme without realizing it.
Yeah, I think some of the biggest sectors to get hit is going to be the beverages. I'm still seeing some beverages that don't emulsify. They just sort of squirt their oil in there. And so that'll be kind of one, if they test it and it doesn't have the full amount of cannabinoids or percentages, that could get sued. And then to your point about pesticides, the mold to gold, and how you could just use that moldy plant material and blast it into CO2. Eventually, I think there's going to be lawsuits on that. I've talked to a lot of people and they all say that it's healthy and it's fine and it's good. I just don't believe it. I think there's going to be issues around it. And lawyers love a good fight. So whether or not it happens, I think you guys are going to have to come back to the Talking Hedge and find out. But with that, I think we're going to roll this one up. I want to thank my guest, Kat Glogowski, angel investor and attorney. Kat, thanks again for being on the Talking Hedge.
Thanks, Josh.
Appreciate it. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.